9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All systems go.
You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything
Could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
And good morning. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh, and I'm glad to be here with you. I'm very thankful that you're here with us on this February the 9th, Monday, 2026. Got a great show planned for you today. It's going to have some local news headlines. We'll talk about things going on in the community, what it is to live in Sudbury, and the good, the bad, the ugly, and then we'll talk about a little bit of our situation in our country, basically, and something that isn't talked about enough. Today we'll talk about conflict of interest and what this is, what it means. Why is it important for us to know? Why is it important to discuss, and what is going on with conflict of interest in terms of our current administrative government that's running things. There are many facts that point to, if we continue to define conflict of interest as we always have, then there are many conflicts of interest with our current Prime Minister and his ties to Brookfield and the government contracts that are given out with your taxpayers' money that goes to not only Brookfield, where Mark Carney gains, but also other decisions he makes, he directly benefits in terms of his own personal wealth. Now that should make anyone, no matter who you voted for or what you think about politics or anything, that should just make you ask, okay, conflict of interest, well, that doesn't sound good. And this person on the radio or on the internet is telling me that our government is engaged in conflicts of interest using my money to gain personal wealth. I should at least look into that and decide for myself whether that is true. And if so, am I okay with that? And some people might be. They might be okay with a prime minister and his friends getting rich off being in that position to make those decisions with your taxpayers' money and just personally enrich themselves. Many people could be okay with that. But you need to at least look into it and know that that is what's going on, if it indeed is going on. And we will do our best today to show you that it is indeed going on. All right? Simple as that. And you might say, well, why isn't CBC telling me this? Or why isn't CTV or Global or the Toronto Star or any news outlet saying this? Why are you the only one who's bringing this to my attention? And the answer is, well, it's a few $100 million reason why, because our media is paid off from the government, right? So it's not in their best interest to talk about these types of things, because that's basically what's propping up their whole industry. It is just a perfect storm that happened with the internet, and their advertising sales went way down and they needed money. And so the government stepped in and said, well, we can give you money, wink, wink, you know what you got to do though, right? You just got to be friendly with us and you'll keep the gravy train going. It's human nature. It's mathematics. It's what happens. So that's what happened with our media. So we'll talk about that in our deep dive. We have our Heart Hub finally set to open February 17th, right here in the greater city of Sudbury. We'll talk a little bit about that. And there's also a school that's slated to be opened for youth to receive mental health treatment in the wake of Cecil Phaser being phased out. There's going to be huge gaps for our youth who struggle in our society. So anyways, those stories and more. We're live on CKLU 96.7 FM. Also streaming live at cklu.ca. We are streaming live on facebook.com/Sudbury News everywhere in the world except for Sudbury in Canada because of our federal government regulations, our policies prohibiting news from being posted, for any news organizations being allowed to have a Facebook page, and anyone sharing. We're not allowed to share news. You can take a little snippet of a headline and share it, not much information there, and then put your opinion. That's what's allowed. So, they're letting that go. And they were letting us go kind of thing because we weren't real news, right? Until somebody complained in the city, possibly. We can only speculate who complained. But we have some pretty good ideas because it would need to be somebody in an influential enough position to complain to have the Facebook page shut down. So all that to say, we're live everywhere else in the world except for Sudbury and Canada on Facebook. We are live on YouTube, however, here at Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. We're also going to be found on demand there, along with x.com/Sudbury News, Sudbury.news, which is our local news aggregator. Remember to like, share, and comment on YouTube. We'll get your comments up on the screen for those watching and read, as many of them as we can, for those listening. So thanks for joining us. Let's dive right in with a little bit of weather, and then we'll be back with your comments, news headlines, the rest of the show, a deep dive into conflicts of interests in our federal government at the federal level. And lots to cover today in a short period of time. We'll be back right after this. And Sudbury weather brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. Currently it's negative 20 degrees. It feels like minus 27, but I have a feeling that it's going to say it's even colder when we go through the daily forecast. Cloudy, 60% chance of flurries this afternoon, and wind becoming 40 kilometers per hour. High of minus 11, wind chill minus 32, as I said, higher than minus 27, 5 degrees higher or lower. This morning, minus 19. It'll be minus 32 with the wind chill this morning. Very cold. So hopefully you've plugged in your car or you're dressing warm. You warm up your car before you head off to where you need to go. It'll be minus 19 this afternoon. There is a risk of frostbite. However, it will begin to get a little milder. Tonight, cloudy with a 60% chance of flurries this evening, and after midnight, periods of snow beginning after midnight, 5 centimeters. Like, we need more snow, right? That's what you were saying to yourself. You were saying, why can't we have more snow? We really do need as much snow as we can get. And here you go. Now you got more. It's exactly what we're asking for. Low of minus 13, wind chill minus 22 this evening, and minus 15 overnight. As you can see, it's getting milder. Tomorrow, periods of snow. More snow, right on. 2 to 4 centimeters. High of minus 5, wind chill minus 15 in the morning, minus 7 in the afternoon. So with that milder temperature comes snow. And then Wednesday, cloudy, minus 5. Thursday, minus 6 and cloudy, minus 3, mix of sun and cloud on Friday, minus 1 with a mix of sun and cloud on Saturday, then cloudy, 0. Yes? Cloudy and 0 on Sunday is the forecast. So I've been saying it's going to be getting milder for the last month, and it hasn't been, because the forecast always has something similar to this. It's just cold for the next couple days, and then it's going to be milder. But yeah, when those couple days are done, it continues to be cold. Like I say, for about a month, this is the way it's been. So is it finally going to happen where we're getting some milder temperatures? We'll have to see. That's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. Back with news headlines, comments, and more right after this. Welcome back to Sudbury News Talk. It is 8 a.m. and we are joined by a few people here, as usual, on YouTube. Good morning, Monique. You got your prayer emoji, your smiley emoji. You got Belinda here saying politicians and diapers must be changed often. And for the same reason. Oh my goodness. Fill in the blanks there with that answer. It's pretty funny. Politicians and diapers need to be changed often and for the same reason. That'll go well with our deep dive story today. Evelyn, good morning to you. And yes, people are agreeing. Good morning. One quick dub. Thanks for being on. Marianne, good morning from Coldbury. It's cold here as well in Sudbury. And it looks like Liette is here. Hello from Collingwood on YouTube. Yes, good morning, Liette. Thanks for being here. Great to see you. Larry, good morning, my fellow Canadians. And comedians too, right? Canadians and comedians sounds so familiar, and maybe that's why there's so many comedians from Canada. Northern Hillbilly, good morning to you. And Marianne, good morning, everyone. Keeping warm, hopefully, yes. Hoping everyone is keeping warm. That's Marianne. And Hazel, good morning. Prayer emoji, much needed, much appreciated. And Larry says, yes, but conflict of interest, there is always ways around it with black law. Oh, they don't even need to go around it now. Wait till today's story. They won't need to go around anything. If you change the goalpost, you can score every time. So just make the goalpost go from one end of the field to the other and now kick the ball. That's all. Hey, it was hard to score before, but if we change the goalposts, it's very easy to score. You know, changing the laws makes it very easy not to break them. So they're just going to change the law so that way there's no more conflict of interest, right? If you're doing the wrong things and you're breaking laws and you have the power to change a law, why not? Then you're not breaking anything. That makes sense, right? Okay. Marianne, it's more than a conflict of interest. The Canadian people don't have a say and are being stripped of their rights, and that is 100% true. Denise, good morning to you. Blessings to everyone. Evelyn, all bankers are crooks. Okay. So bankers, are they good law-abiding, upright citizens, you know, the world bankers, the ones that run our system? Or do you think they got a flaw or two? Okay, where the good go? Good morning to you. Yay. Hey, brother. Good to see you. Continue the great work. Yes. And yourself as well. I believe that's Dave, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I have to sometimes remember the handle. Not the easiest thing to do with so many handles now on YouTube. At least on Facebook, there's people's names, right? And Maurice is here. Good morning to you. And Belinda, conflicts of interest and profiting off the people of Canada. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's one thing to have a conflict of interest, but that's a pretty, I don't know, it leaves a mark on you if they're just using your money. Imagine if you can just use other people's money to get rich just by making decisions. Okay, I'm going to say that person needs to move out of that house, and I'm going to use your money to buy that house, and I'm going to increase the rent, and I'm just going to make money off the rent from now on. Imagine if you just went around doing stuff like that. I'm trying to use an analogy that we could relate to that's on a local level, right? You're just making decisions with other people's lives and money, and you're getting rich off it personally. I think people would be pretty pissed if it was on a local level. Sorry for using that terminology, but people would be pretty upset if you were doing that on a local level. But it's done on a federal level, and you got the media just kind of saying nothing to see here. Or when it is out in the open, they do damage control for you, and people think there's nothing to see here. It's so interesting to see how the media affects people, the mainstream media. There's some friends I have who they kind of just watch the CNN and the MSNBC stuff and the CBC, you know. And they're like, oh, the United States, it's so bad. The United States, it's terrible down there. It's so great to live in Canada. You know what I mean? Because they don't hear anything bad about Canada from our media. They don't know there's a huge conflict of interest and our prime minister is just enriching himself and his friends off of your money. Like, they don't know that because they don't hear it because they only watch mainstream news, right? So we'll show people that this morning. It's not that hard. So let's just dive in with a couple local headlines first. You know, the strike's over apparently at Laurentian. Did you hear about that? They were on strike, and the professors came up with a solution, and now they're not on strike anymore. So that's going on. Okay, let's get this up on the screen. This is Sudbury Star for everyone. The hub aims to get the addicted and homeless off Sudbury streets. So it's finally here. The Homeless and Addiction Recovery Treatment Hub opens February 17th at 105 Elm Street, thanks to almost $19 million in provincial funding. Lots of millions of dollars being thrown at the homeless and addictions, right? And here's another 19 million. So we'll see if the millions of dollars will actually show some results. We talk at length on the show about money and about results, right? So here they are making the huge announcement there about the Heart Hub. You got everybody there who needs to be there. In little more than a week, Greater Sudbury Heart Hub will begin to open its doors. Those who are ready to make some life changes and find a soft spot to lay their heads. Part of the province's wide heart or homeless addiction recovery hubs aim to ease access to care, treatment, and housing, as well as services for those struggling with homeless addictions. Right? So there's a story there from the Canadian Press about Heart Hubs in Belleville. The Heart Hub model is bringing more access to individuals. And good morning, Homestead Trad wife. They're bringing them with a warm handoff to different organizations and trying to provide them with the services they need. So it's about accessibility to services, and it's about coordinating services, because not one organization necessarily provides all services. So coordinating and collaborating and having almost a wraparound service for individual based on their need. Patty McDonald, CEO of the Sudbury Manitoulin branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association, explained on Thursday. So it sounds like she's favorable. She's in favor of it. The nice thing about the Heart Hub model is that it bridges the clinical and the housing aspects, because people really can't move forward if they don't have housing. If they're in transitional or supportive housing, that's an important part, then the clinical will become more successful. The City of Greater Sudbury organized an outdoor press conference on Thursday to announce the final phase of the local Heart Hub initiative. Under gently falling snow, a series of speakers shared their excitement for the launch of the Heart Hub at 105 Elm. It opens its doors February 17th, as we said. It'll be a central access point for individuals to connect to housing, health, and clinical supports, the city indicated in a press release. Right? So almost $19 million is going towards getting this project off the ground. It'll be $6.3 million per year for 3 years. So what it's going to do after that, is there still going to be funding after that? We do not know. We do not know. So just so we have time for our conflict of interest segment and our deep dive, our good buddy from Moose on the Loose will be talking about this whole thing. So I might jump in from time to time just to make some comments, but he puts it in such a good way. And he has his chart at moosechart.com. So if any of these things are like, no, that's not, he's just making this stuff up. Carney's got his elbows up. He's a banker. He saved Canada. He's only got Canadians' best interest in mind. He gives great speeches against Donald Trump. I don't believe any of this. So you go to moosechart.com. Moose Chart. It's a chart, and he is Moose on the Loose. That's his handle on YouTube. Moosechart.com, and you can see it all there. You can do your own research. You can fact check all the things he says yourself. You don't have to rely on CBC to just tell you whatever you believe. You can actually look into things yourself. Did you know that? You can know all these things. And Vin, good morning to you. Thanks for being on. So without further ado, is there a conflict of interest in our federal government by our Prime Minister and his friends?
By all the critical measures of international relations, America will still remain our principal partner in the world.
The numbers are out. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today, we're going to take a look at the outrageous debt that the Liberal Party has saddled Canadians with over the past decade. We've got more job losses, food inflation, Carney's ministers refusing to answer questions. We got a bunch of stuff. Let's jump into this. Look at this nonsense. We got Governor General Mary Simon is in Nuuk, Greenland with Anita and they're opening up this new Canadian consulate today, a city of 60,000 people, as Mr. Bench pointing out. And the kicker to all this, there's only 16 Canadians that live in Greenland. So Mary Simon, she appears where she right here. So there she is, right there. Anita and 16 Canadians live in Greenland. They're opening up a consulate for 60,000 people. Imagine opening a consulate for a town of 60,000 people. It's ridiculous. And with that, it is now complete. They have set up the consulate in Nuuk. Got some photos of it here. They flew out all these people just to go do this. It's ridiculous. There's a picture of all of them on the plane with Canadian flags. Like, I mean, what a waste of money. 16 Canadians live in Greenland. What is this? This is just to send a message to Donald Trump we're wasting more money? What's the money per month of the lease of the office we don't really require? Who's the ambassador? How much are they going to be paid for this position we don't really need? Great questions. Complete waste of resources. Got some big news here. Carney government is giving $146 million of Canadian taxpayer money to Ukraine. As Melissa pointing here, Ukraine secures $690 million grant from Japan, and Canada, 544 of that is coming from Japan. This is not a loan. This is just our money being given to them when we have people in our own streets who don't have food or a place to sleep. They're just giving our money away. Our citizens have to be cared for first, period. Close the border. There's a Russian cargo plane that's been parked at Pearson for years, racking up rental costs. Give the rental fees, fill it full of fuel, hand the keys over to the Ukrainian, get rid of it, make a decision. Ukraine should be dipping into their gold reserves, not fighting their own war on international welfare and money laundering. Yeah, they have massive gold reserves. Why aren't we getting paid for this stuff? Take their gold. We'll take straight gold for this stuff. They need some money. They need loans. We'll take their gold. Moving ahead, we've got this from the Hill Times. We need to cancel the reminder of the F-35 purchase, pivot to Saab, and bolster our domestic aviation industry. If the left think that the Americans are so scary and Donald Trump is evil, then why would we build an inferior jet to fight the Americans with? The F-35s would blow us out of the air. This logic has no sense. Obviously, we need to go with F-35s because they're far superior. Period. That's it. We got Chris Workington posting this. Carney's new strategic partners in Beijing are reportedly bankrolling Russia's war in Ukraine, providing 60% of funds used by Moscow for the war. Carney spoke of a new world order in China. Is this what he meant? Supporting countries accused of bankrolling Russia's war in Ukraine. Canadians deserve answers. Moving ahead, we've got Pierre Poilievre putting this out. 52,000 private sector jobs have been lost in January. 28,000 of those are in manufacturing alone. 25,000 jobs lost. 94,000 Canadians gave up on trying to find work in January. 60.8% of Canadians over 15 now work. And with that, we're seeing this coming from the National Post. The Liberal Party of Canada has accumulated $1.27 trillion in debt. Almost half of that has been in over the past 5 years. They are bankrupting our country. This is why food is so expensive. They just keep printing money and making life more unaffordable for Canadians. If you double the amount of money we have, but you're not doubling the goods become more expensive. As we see here, the price of everything has gone up. Coffee, 76%. This is over the past 6 years. Beef, 59%. Mortgage interest, 54%. I wonder who that benefits. Perhaps Mark Carney's friends? Mr. Banker knows a lot of bankers. I mean, he brought in Doug Guzman, a former RBC guy himself. Home insurance, pasta products, eggs, rent, restaurant food, bakery items, gasoline, 20% increase. I was thinking about this the other day. Kirk summed it up. Government priorities of handouts, $1,000 to Canadians who can't afford food, $5,000 to rich Canadians who can afford EVs. I mentioned it in my video. Canadians are struggling to meet ends meet who don't have enough money for food, living in tents, living in their cars. A $5,000 handout from the government for an EV is ridiculous because they can't afford a $50,000 EV. And as he points out, $8,800 raises for politicians. Yeah, of course they're going to get a nice big beefy raise come here in April. And that's not all. Mark Carney's Privy Council office awarded their own executives $28,000 in bonuses in 2025 for a job well done. It's coming from Blacklock's reporter. And what does Carney do? You saw it in the House of Commons this week. He blamed the Conservatives for this. At the beginning of his reign as Prime Minister, he says, judge me on the price of food. Food has gone up, and he blames Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives for this. And why? Because obstruction. That's why. You blocked everything. I couldn't do anything, which is not the case. The Conservatives let this GST handout go through, even though it's going to further increase inflation. It's a temporary band-aid. And Mark Carney's EV subsidies, this is just for the rich left who are buying EVs, and they're buying American EVs because only the Dodge Charger Scat Pack is the only EV that qualifies in Canada, that's made entirely in Canada for the subsidy programs. He's essentially taken our tax dollars, shoring up his base, and those EVs, most of them will be American or they'll come in from Germany or somewhere else. They're not going to be Canadian cars. And we've got Liberal Dan McTeague with this. The federal EV subsidy program is coming back, despite the fact that it amounts to a subsidy for wealthy Canadians, and the last time proved to be way more expensive than expected. Let's jump over the Moose chart here. I just want to break down some of these companies that Mark Carney's got in his Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1. With his EV handouts, those $5,000 handouts of taxpayer money shoring up his Liberal base. Look what he's got in here. We're just going to break this down just so you can see the companies that he put in here. This very same fund that he gets his carried interest, 3% of the total profits here after Brookfield gets paid, depending on how many years. If it's 15% return that Brookfield gets, 25%. You've seen this on the channel. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So number one, Westinghouse Electric Company. He mentioned this during the election. This is one of the most important pieces in this fund. Brookfield bought this company with Camco. We've got Deriva Energy, formerly Duke Energy Renewables. They acquired this for $2.8 billion. There's Scout Energy. This is renewable development, wind and solar.
So are you paying attention to all of the conflicts of interest? He's just talking about a couple, but he's talking pretty fast. He's naming numbers. He's naming businesses that are being invested in. But Brookfield is invested in all these companies that are receiving Canadian taxpayers' dollars in the millions and millions of dollars. He's getting rich and his friends are getting rich. But sometimes it's hard to pay attention when someone's just like a fire hose, just listing something off. So I hope everyone's getting, there's hundreds of companies, literally hundreds of companies that are under the umbrella, and they're all invested in the types of things that he's moving towards now. So EVs. So he's going to gain off the sale of EVs. His company is invested in the type of electricity that's going to power the EVs once they come out. So he's got his tentacles in every single jar it could possibly be in, right? So again, he's rhyming them all off, but you got to go to moosechart.com to look at it for yourself if you're in disbelief in any way, shape, or form.
a $1 billion deal. They have massive pipeline of wind and solar that likely benefit from new government infrastructure spending. Scout Energy acquisition by Brookfield Renewables finalized. We've got Urban Grid solar and wind storage acquired for $650 million. Got that one here. Press release 2022. Mark Carney setting this stuff all up. Once again, looking at the timeline here, Mark Carney got in August 2020. In 2022, he became chair of Brookfield Asset Management. He was the one pulling the strings then, and he was in charge of the renewables department. This is all his handiwork. We got Standard Solar acquired for $450 million. Company specializes in distributed energy, commercial, and community solar. Bring in the receipts here. Brookfield to invest in $2 billion in Scout Clean Energy and Standard Solar. We've got Entropy Carbon Capture. I've talked about this one a lot on the channel. It's not down here, and you'll notice I have all these down here. I now have them labeled as Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, and then all the information is here, and then just all stacked up. I'm going to be putting the flags in there. You can see this one is coming from India. We'll get to that in a second, but if we go over here, we've got Entropy Carbon Capture. This is the one that the Canada Growth Fund, funded by the Liberals, gave $200 million to Entropy Carbon Capture. At this time, it was Deborah K. Orita, Mark Carney's colleague from Goldman Sachs back in the day, who was in charge of the final decisions of all this.
So again, if you're just joining us for the first time, if you're listening on the radio or you're joining us on our lives, we're going through Moose on the Loose's analysis, and he also keeps a chart of all of the conflicts of interest of not only Mark Carney, but people in our government and in his administration by taking your taxpayers' dollars and enriching themselves. And that's basically the definition of conflict of interest, right? And it's just overwhelming. It's like Niagara Falls of information in terms of what's going on that is not talked about, and you won't hear about it in our mainstream media. And you ask yourself why? Well, you'll have to just answer that yourself. Why isn't anyone else talking about this? And do you agree with this? Is it okay for our Prime Minister to enrich himself with your tax dollars? And he'll just continue on here saying more from his analysis of and his research as being a true journalist and looking into the conflicts of interest of our current Prime Minister.
And there's more information about Patrick Carbonu and all this kind of stuff. But basically, tax dollars came from the government to the Liberal Party to Entropy back in December 2023 for this one. And we've got Avada Group, which is green hydrogen and ammonia. Tim Hodgson, just in the past video there, he's talking about potentially a pipeline now because India wants our oil badly. Well, he said they had green tech that they want to bring over here. I think that's what he's talking about, is the green hydrogen and ammonia. And that's that one here. So $1.3 billion for green hydrogen, solar PV module and growth of renewable energy platform from Brookfield. I've got the full document here too. This is a PDF, so if you want to read this, when I update the Moose chart here, I got a bunch of stuff to update, but all 3 pages of this document are here. I've done a whole video on green hydrogen. I found an expert on YouTube who basically just debunked this. Green hydrogen is so incredibly inefficient. That's what they're proposing over on the East Coast. Tim Hodgins mentioned this multiple times. That expert that I found on YouTube, he had entire videos, like 2-hour video, breaking this down, how basically you convert wind energy into ammonia. Wind energy provides electricity for an electrolyzer to basically, I believe, smash together water and air, turn it into ammonia that gets converted into a gas. It gets put on a ship, and then they send that over to a place like Germany where they have a facility to then deconstruct that and use that as energy. But in that...
Did you hear how inefficient that whole process is? And that's what Brookfield is invested in, that. And so that's what he's pushing our country to produce and go through all of those steps to make the most inefficient and really harmful to the environment. They say it's green, but all of this processing actually makes it harder on the environment, all in the name of, no, it's more green, it's whatever. And so it's really just a waste of our taxpayers' dollars, at the same time enriching him and a few of his friends.
Process, you end up from 100% energy after all the conversion, you're left with like 10 to 20% of the total energy afterwards. It is so incredibly inefficient, and for the government even to be talking about this kind of stuff is absolutely ludicrous. With all these companies that Mark Carney's gone out with, Brookfield, they bought these, they're working with these companies, they're all pointing the same direction: electricity, carbon capture, carbon credits. It's very clear what Mark Carney's doing here. Why would he give a $5,000 handout for rich Canadians for their new EVs when Canadians are struggling to pay the bills and they need more money for food? $1,000 handout for poor Canadians, but $5,000 for the rich.
So with that, he's giving handouts of your money for rich people to buy EVs, and then he's invested in the companies that are going to provide the electricity for driving those cars, right? So he's giving your money away to make an industry that he can then get rich off that's really inefficient, less effective. And then he's going to tax the people that produce the gas and the oil. If you don't want to go along with it, he's going to make money too off that, off carbon capture and carbon credits. That's something he developed. He actually came up with that whole idea. So he's going to enrich himself off everything. Off the ones that aren't going along with it, he's going to tax them. Off the ones that are going along with it, he's going to make money off the fuel and the industry itself.
That's the kind of guy Mark Carney is. We've got Kirk posting this, pay attention to the yellow line. Canada's ability to export electricity has been declining for years, and now we are a net importer. This also means we don't have a stable grid. Instead of building out low-cost energy that provides our economy and supplying the U.S., adding billions to the economy, Canada fell into ideology and red tape, putting us years behind, now needing the U.S. for electricity. And then, the numbers don't lie. This is something we've known for a while now. You can see the yellow line here, and if you look here at this blue area and the gray area, this is positive and this is negative. Well, we're below now. We're right here, as in we have to import the electricity. See in the bottom left, imports versus the gray's exports. For the final line here of 2025, you can see there's more blue line than gray line, meaning we're a net importer of electricity. This will just continue to get worse. We are so far behind the times. BC went from a net exporter to importing up to 1/4 of its electricity from America at a cost of $1.4 billion a year. And the people still re-elected the NDP. That's how dumb everything is today. You just can't make this stuff up. Jumping ahead here, we've got Stephen Harper giving a speech after 20 years since he became prime minister, and someone was caught on the CTV mic, hot mic, saying that he's right, saying that Donald Trump is not to blame for this. It is the Liberals. Sure, some of the most recent layoffs, the tariffs in the auto sector, go to Donald Trump. In general, most of this stuff is because of bad Liberal policies. It's right as the transition happens from going from his speech over to Vasi Capello, so you can hear the person say it. Somebody in the newsroom, it's not Vasi.
These realities mean that we must reduce our dependence on the U.S. in order to protect our sovereignty and our economy. But we must do so also clearly understanding that by all the critical measures of international relations, America will still remain our principal partner in the world. Our national conversation must be mature enough to acknowledge that many of the difficulties we now face as a country cannot be blamed on Donald Trump. In too many cases, they stem from bad decisions by our own government.
He's right. Canada has to.
Right there, as is transitioning.
He's right. Canada has to. He's right. Canada has to rapidly.
So somebody in the back room there is a conservative. That's actually a bit relieving to hear that. Finally, something like that coming from CTV mainstream media. Jumping ahead here, we've got a committee clip where conservative Jazz Raj absolutely grills Francois Philippe Champagne on their new Bill C-15. Mark Nixon's got posted here. If approved, would allow Brookfield to gain contracts without adhering to the conflict of interest.
So this is what we were talking about earlier, about if you are breaking the law and you're in a position to do so, why not just change the law so that way you're not breaking it anymore? And listen to Champagne's responses to just this person trying to get a simple yes or no answer. Will the conflict of interest be affected by this new bill?
Act. This is so alarming.
Minister, in Division 5, Part 5, your government is once again asking for unprecedented powers to be able to exempt any entity or company from any law or regulation in Canada, with the exception of the Criminal Code. Would this include the Conflict of Interest Act? Yes or no?
Well, I think you're referring to something which is called the regulatory sandboxes, and I just want to bring that to the committee's attention. You know,
Minister, I'm not asking what it is or why it's there. This is very concerning. If this is passed, would that exempt any entity determined by the Prime Minister or any minister to exempt a company or an individual from the Conflict of Interest Act in Canada? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I was just trying to provide background. You know, Canada is catching up, I would say, with other OECD
Minister,
countries.
this is a very concerning fact that's inside the budget. Would, after these powers are granted to a Prime Minister or minister, would they be allowed to exempt a company or an individual to be exempt from Canada's law, which is the Conflict of Interest Act? Yes or no?
Well, I was just trying to say, Madam Chair, that regulatory sandboxes is a tool that has been requested by.
So frustrating to listen to politicians who just can't. They don't have to answer questions anymore, right? So the answer is yes. The answer is they're changing the law so that way all the things we just heard from Moose on the Loose, talking about all the conflicts of interest, which there are hundreds, if not thousands, of conflicts of interest with his policies that he enriches himself personally, his personal wealth with his investments. He's making these decisions which make no sense at all for Canadians. It only makes sense for a few people, including himself and Brookfield, to enrich themselves with less effective ways of producing energy that don't make any sense. They're just pushing that forward. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But what does make sense is he's getting richer, and so are his friends. And so you hear it here. This guy must be getting rich somehow off of it. He must know what to invest in, so he puts his personal money in these things, and then they change the law. They say, no, it's not a conflict of interest anymore because we don't deem that as being against the law. So they can just change the law.
Point of order, exempting. The minister refuses to answer because this would give unprecedented powers once again to this government. And Canadians are worried. In fact, even the Toronto Star, a non-conservative friendly paper, has written about this. That's how concerning this is. Would this being passed give the Prime Minister or any minister in the government exempt to any company or individual from the Conflict of Interest Act? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I know some colleagues are more interested in the questions than the answer, but let me try to inform Canadian. Regulatory sandboxes are a tool which are very well used by OECD country, the G7, and actually, I would say, Madam Chair, Canada is catching up.
Does it include the Conflict of Interest Act being exempt? Yes or no?
He won't answer this question because they want to be able to give contracts to Brookfield and just bypass the whole system.
Madam Chair, as I was saying, Canada is catching up, and the
Minister, I'll take that as a yes, and that's very concerning. So I'm going to give an example to you. And again, I'm just asking if you can give me a yes or no. If a company like Brookfield has been looking to get a contract from either the Prime Minister or any minister in the government, would they be exempt from the Conflict of Interest Act, knowing very well of the Prime Minister's declared conflict of interest after this passes? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm sure the business people who are watching this morning are a bit surprised. Everyone thought in this country that the Conservative would be business friendly. This is a request from the business sector and Canadian innovators for Canada to catch up with the G7 countries.
Champagne is an absolute rat. All these guys are rats.
Mr. Fragiscatos, point of order.
Again, we want to hear the answer.
Minister, I will take your non-answer as the conflict of interest the act would not apply to a company or an individual if any prime minister or minister grants them those powers and a contract under the government.
Yeah, which is scary, right? Because now there's no more, it's not bad to have a conflict of interest because they just wipe the slate clean and say, no, there's nothing wrong with that. The law, says that it's okay for us to do that now. And we're a total dictatorship, total communist regime running the country. It's been going that way. They're changing all the laws one at a time in order to do this. But it's all the time we got for the show. It's all the time we got for the country too, unfortunately. But we'll be back same time, same place on the same platforms, God willing, tomorrow. Remember to stay aware, like, share, take care, and stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. Have a wonderful Monday, everyone, beginning to your work week, and we'll see you tomorrow. Ciao for now.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.